Hey family, how you doing? This your brother Vitamin Radi. Peace to you, peace to your home, peace to your family, peace to your community, peace to your ancestry, peace to my community, peace to my ancestry, and peace to the nation that you are and they are building. Peace also to the Goddic forces, great spirit above, mother below. This is Mtima Radi. The ancestors. They're busy tonight, y'all. They're very busy tonight. Sorry, I wanted to go and get the Sacred Mother, who is now standing before me, Het Haru. But I also wanted to start off by showing you this beautiful, beautiful, wonderful statue that I have of Bess. The ancestors would not let me start this unless I did. This is absolutely one of my favorite statues. People who suggest that statues do not have a personality of their own, they are insane. And people who suggest that there are no energies associated with statues, also insane. This has been one of my favorite statues since I purchased her. She is very misunderstood because her energy is typically defined as sensualness, lustfulness, sexuality. All right, and we, because of the situation that we find ourselves in, the society that we live in, we do not understand that there are dual meanings to a lot of those words, and the power in Bess, especially when you combine her ancient order elements with other ancient order elements, is powerful. She is one of my favorites. So I wanted to put her up because we often talk about, Sekhmet. We talk about Het Haru. We talk about Ra. We talk about Haru. Aset. But come to think about it, I do not have an Aset. That's crazy. I need to get one. Anyway, but we do not talk about Bess. She is very underutilized and underappreciated, except when you start talking about marketing and stuff, then her energies are misused. That stated, let's continue. There's a lot that's happening right now. I was watching John Oliver, and that's actually what got me moving towards doing this video. I was watching John Oliver's episode on facial recognition. And as I was watching it, I asked the ancestors, I asked them very bluntly, I go, why in the hell would you create a mechanism such as facial recognition, which, because of the dynamic that has governed European society, it will never be used in a non-oppressive, non-repressive, non-suppressive way. Why would you create such a mechanism? An ancestor said to me, what we tell you, you must tell everybody, because that's an important question to ask. Obviously, the majority of you who are watching this video understand that the time for Europeans to rule this planet is ending. You already know that. And you probably all remember that I told you before. In humanity, there's 4 strands that separate one group from another. Race is not a strand. The strands are, as they're said in English, mankind, man, humankind, human. There is a 5th and a 6th, but they rarely ever come up. They will be in the next era, but not now. Mankind and man are the most degraded forms because uh, they don't have the soul force running through them, if I could be blunt about it. Man has a kernel, but if I remember my numbers correctly, man is uh, usually less than 30% of that being force is used for soul. Mankind has none, zero. I also told you before, and just to kind of round it out, humankind has between obviously 30 and 60, and then humans have 60 and above. Um, and sometimes that above is significantly above. Some humans fall into the realm of the fifth strand that is and has always been present on the planet, and they have over 100% soul because they are now tapped into the cosmic concept of their soul. But that's another story. I also told you before that some rays, when we talk about race, we're talking about rays. So some rays have more of one strand than the others. So, for instance, Europeans tend to overwhelmingly have more of mankind in man. This is why, for a long time, until they made a discovery, I think it was like in 1930, which is when, or it was either 1930 or 1920, which is why suddenly in like the 1940s you see them overwhelmingly concerned with human rights. You know, before it, if you look at what they wrote in the 1800s, it was all about man and mankind. It was all about man and mankind. They thought man and mankind was the highest order in the world. You don't have to take my word for it. Anybody who doesn't take my word for it, that's fine. Just go back. You can actually find the books. They wrote like that. This is why they called themselves and the entirety of humanity. They called it mankind. They called it man. You gotta love them. You gotta love the Moors. The Moors gave them enough to hang themselves with. But Europe had, and by the way, Europe didn't have to go through this. Europe did at one time have a significant humankind and human population. A lot of your Celtic tribes that were murdered and displaced, they were humankind and humans. There were other tribes, but the Celtics were really big. And then whenever they would get people who would be born and have the light sufficiently in them, remember I was telling you about the Catholic Church? What is the word that I'm looking for? Pinning light into it and allowing the light to extinguish? Absolutely. They would get humans and humankinds that would be born who would want to do great things, and the Catholic Church would bring them into the Catholic Church and say, now you can't have children, now you can't have sex, your line needs to die. And by the way, that's part of what the Catholic Church seems to be about. You know, this is speculation, but to have a organization which actively seeks to take good people and to cut them out of the genealogy, or the gene pool, to cut them out of the gene pool, you can't find any positives with that. You can't, because you're only bringing darkness when you do that. You could, and obviously, you guys are going to tell me, well, there's people who have sex and people who have kids and, they use kids for rituals and what have you. But it's bigger than just that. I understand all of that. It's bigger than just that. You are literally taking the light out of the gene pool. When you have light in the gene pool, and that light is is allowed to interact with other people, and this includes sexually, you open people up. You open them up. So Europe caused itself, and this is why the Moors were sent in, to try to elevate them, to put them onto the path necessary to really be ready for their place in the world. Well, we saw what happened, and that was because they were overwhelmingly mankind and man. When you got too much of that energy that is not rooted in the soul, you're going to act like the beast. And that's what you're going to do. And that's exactly what they did. De las Casas, who wrote about Columbus's exploits in the Caribbean, I just recently heard a great quote by, it wasn't him, but it was by one of his fellow fathers, who said that Columbus's boys were acting like a bunch of ravenous wolves. They weren't lying, because they were ravenous wolves. When you are motivated by that spirit that is not grounded in human soul, humanity can be very, very violent. And when you are motivated by lust and greed and sexual desire, which can only be fulfilled by taking the innocence of children, and by innocence I'm here talking about rape, you're going to act like animals. And that's exactly what they did. So Europeans have a mostly man and mankind composition. There is a very small group among Europeans that fit the humankind in human, and an even smaller one that fit under the label of the next two strands. In fact, it's kind of interesting because the ancestors told me that in trying to embark Europeans onto that fifth path, those entities that tried to come here and build a genealogical force that would allow that possible, which included a lot of radicals back in the 1800s and the early 1900s and mid 1900s. A lot of those people were ostracized and killed. And so the force necessary for such a what's the word I'm looking for? For such a presence for Europeans isn't there. And the few that you do have that their genealogy allows them to hold that force, a lot of these people are strung out on drugs because they can't handle being in such a degraded network. And I mean that. In order to support those higher energies and entities, you have to have networks around you that energetically support it. And a lot of these people just don't. I really kind of feel bad for some of this generation, this previous generation, because these people have glorious talents that are being put to waste because they were born into a degraded genealogical stock. And the ones that can manage to integrate themselves into the networks that have been created for expression have to do so in a mediocre way. Asians are next in line. And because of events that happened during Mao's reign, and really during the imperialist time periods um, they're even stuck in man and mankind. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the Chinese government is going after there are practitioners who are trying to practice this ancient Chinese public worshipping. And what they're trying to actually do is mount a spiritual defense against the expansion of mankind and man um, genetic imprintation. And so by doing these public spiritual rituals, they are literally bringing about consciousness. And that is why the Chinese government is going so heavily against them. Because they understand that if you allow this to happen, you're going to have a free will revolution in China, which is going to break China apart if the wealthy doesn't give in to the demands of the revolution. And so they're trying to stop it. This is also partially why they're doing what they're doing with Tibet. And there's a specific genealogical sect within the Uyghurs. And the Uyghurs hold a specific Islam, which China is not trying to stomp that out. China wants some of their books. There are books. The Chinese government is working with the Anglo-European American government. There's books that the Uyghurs have. They're ancient scrolls that foretell some prophetic whatever. I'm not sure what it tells, but they want those books. And that's what a lot of this has to do with. But the Uyghurs won't give it to them. The Uyghurs have pretty much said, we will die before we let you get that information. And I don't know exactly why, but it must be important. And then Native Americans, which there are groups in China that are human and humankind, and most of them are they're not paleface. But there are some, obviously, paleface that are human in humankind. But those are the ones that are being dramatically suppressed. Because there is a free will wave that is about to sweep through this planet like nothing you've ever seen. Saturn is about to move into a special alignment with Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. And that's going to happen like in the next 10 years. And as soon as that alignment is crossed, that's when the free will is just going to pour onto this planet. People know it's coming. They're trying to prepare to stop it. And obviously Native American, Native Indigenous people are humankind and human. As is Africans or black people throughout the world. They wanted me to go through all this because as I was watching the facial recognition thing and I was asking the question, obviously, like, why would you do this? You know that it's not going to be used for good. They said to me, the reason is simple. Because man and mankind are dying out. They're going to be. Their stock is going to be falling drastically. So man and mankind are putting together technologies which they hope to pass to the next generation of man and mankind, which is going to look a lot more like you. They're going to be colored. And in doing that, they are then going to be able to use that technology to track those who have genealogical profiles that are opening up and allowing more light in. It is the story of the Bible returned. Nothing is new under the sun. Speaking of that, I gotta go grab a book. All right, family. So I have two books, which I'll get to in a moment. Uh, so this is why it's happening. Uh, we have to understand that much of the last 500 years has been about stopping the Enlightenment from taking place and reversing the Enlightenment. Why? Because, as many of you know, one genealogy will not be able to, one genealogical strand will not be able to cross the threshold that's coming up. And by the way, just to let you know, the calendar has been manipulated to mask when that threshold is. We are not coming close to the threshold yet, but one genealogical strand will not be able to cross the threshold. Now, I've said to you that there is 4 strands. The reality is each of those strands are in fact half strands. So the real 4, which there's more than 4, but the 4 genealogical strands that have been placed in humanity aren't even present on the planet. Why? Because the planet's not big enough. The energy isn't secure enough to hold all 4 of them. Man and human are the only 2 strands that are actually on the planet right now. Man is the one strand that will not be able to go on to the next level. Will not. Man is split up into 2 substrands. That's mankind and man, just as human is humankind and human. That is important to understand. Because when we talk about our rays and we talk about them having more of one than the other, that's important. The major challenge that presented itself some time ago when white people were first created was, how are we going to be able to raise white people to the level of holding not only the human strand, but what comes after it? And then 2, is it possible to take what is the genealogical residue of whiteness and graft it onto the forthcoming strands? Those are the major concerns and the major questions. Whiteness was supposed to represent the burning sun at its hottest. That's what it was supposed to represent. It ended up representing more of ice at its coldest. Problem. I just got this book in, and I actually want to show it to you first before I get to the other 2, because this book is a political book, but it actually will give you an idea of some of the shortcomings of the political system, based on the mentality that has gone into creating it, and particularly the philosophies. So I'm very much in love with this book. Check that out. This is Democracy Incorporated. Democracy Incorporated. And it has an introduction by Chris Hedges. Sheldon S. Woolen, Management, Democracy, and the Specter of Inverted Totalitarianism. So, Democracy Incorporated, guys. Get that book. Now, for the other 2 books that I'm going to talk to you about. This is a book that, I will admit, and I mean this, I read this book back in 2006, and when I started listening to Phil Valentine and Bobby Hemmett, I was surprised that they didn't talk about this book. This is an important book. If not to show you, forget about what white people believe. This shows you what is in their mind to plan, because they think that it is cosmically supported. This is the book. It is called The Pleiadian Perspectives on Human Evolution by Amora Kwan Yin. Now, I've read a couple of these books, and they're what they are. But this one is what you need to get. This is one you need to get. If only to understand the reasoning behind why they are doing the things that they are doing. Not to mention, it does give you some ideas of what actually happened in the ice. It does give you an idea of some of the stuff that actually happened in the ice. And this is the author. That's the author. And I'm showing you, typically I don't show you the author, but I think those of you with eyes to see will understand why I showed you the author. The last book, I've showed this book to you before. It's a reprint. I'm not even sure if you can still get it. Okay, there it is, there it is, there it is. The Mulatto in the United States, including a study of the role of mixed blood races throughout the world, by Edward B. Reuter. Reuter. Edward B. Reuter. The Mulatto in the United States. Seriously, check this book out. I still can't remember how I found this book. I really can't. I think I found it I was doing some research on archive.org. I'm one of them people that can do research for 10, 12 hours and not get bored about it. And I might have came across this and happened to look it up on Amazon, and boom, there it was. It could be reprinted, and I got it. Check it out. Finally, and I plan to do a bigger video about this probably next year. All of your world wars, which included Europeans at the head of them, have been cave wars. I've talked about that somewhat before with you guys. If there is going to be another major conflict, it's a cave war. Even right now, what's happening with the United States compared to Russia and China, these are all cave wars. These guys are still living in the factious times that were set way back in the Ice Age. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I love hearing from you guys, so don't hesitate to leave a message down below. Somebody did post a beautiful link for me to check out this video, and the video is powerful. I didn't have time to talk about it today. It wasn't on the agenda, but soon I will be talking about that video because there's a couple of videos I got to talk with you guys about. I will see you on the next one, though. Peace.